if we look at the link between water quality and flow, we can see that out of all the bedrock samples I sampled, all those deep red samples that I showed before, they almost all fall within groundwater discharge areas where groundwater is low. Okay, and that makes sense because if it's a deep source, groundwater moves upwards in general in discharge areas. And so it's bringing that dirtier mineralized water to the surface. And so we found this nice correlation where groundwater levels are low, chloride concentrations are high. Some of these areas are naturally low. Like I said, the Grand River has always been a discharge area, and we've always had high chlorides along here because it's bringing that dirty water up. But we also have this deepening, widening cone of depression, which is also causing these high chloride levels. We had enough data where we could actually delineate the chloride plume, basically a isosurface. So every point on that surface is at least 250 milligrams per liter or more. And so you can see by decade, this plume is getting bigger. So as we pump more, the extent of high chloride concentrations continues to grow. So just to summarize, in Ottawa County, we found that in the last 50 years, groundwater levels have significantly declined. There's no single sector to blame. It's just gradual distributed increase in groundwater withdrawals have played this primary role in causing that decline. Both natural and human processes can determine where chloride is high, and that's where groundwater levels are low. And it's this accumulative increase in pumping that is causing these issues. We did some related work. So we did look at the next 20 years of groundwater elevation changes based on the best estimates of groundwater use going forward. So we worked with the county to use their best estimates of the well build-outs, land use, land cover, and climate trends. And we tried to figure out what will groundwater look like in the next 20 years. We also, given what we understood about Ottawa County, we did some screening level analysis around the state to try to identify other chloride hotspots. And so you can see Ottawa County right here, but there's other parts of the state, especially around the Saginaw Bay, with significantly high chloride concentrations. We did some screening level analysis of water quality. That's this first column, water levels and geology, and we found a lot of the same patterns that we saw in Ottawa County, where groundwater levels are low, chloride concentrations are high, where you have a lot of confining material like clays or silts that makes the problem even worse. And so it's not just Ottawa County. These are 4 counties from completely different parts of the state. Lenawee County in southeast Michigan, Ottawa County in west Michigan, St. Clair County right next to northeast Detroit. I think this is right next to the bay. And so we see a systematic problem across the state. We also screen for water levels. Is there a potential water level decline in response to pumping? And again, this is screening level analysis. It's not perfect. It's just to get an indication of, do we have a problem? And like I said, we sort of, we understand groundwater is important, but we haven't kept tabs on it for the last 50 years or so. And so we're trying to just get a grips with what's going on. So I'll end this with just talking a little bit about the process, and this will be a nice transition into Paul's talk. But what I want to emphasize is a lot of the data that we used in this project, statewide data, and so it was pre-existing, it was free to use, and it was available throughout the state. And so what we were able to do in Ottawa County could be done in theory elsewhere in the state. Without stakeholder and community input throughout the process, this wouldn't have been possible. And so we rerouted our plans a few times throughout the project based on stakeholder input, based on our annual meetings, and that was really, really pivotal. And then as I mentioned before, this is a multi-dimensional problem. There's no single sector to blame, no single party to blame, and so it really requires complex solutions, right? Complex problems require complex solutions, partnerships, etc. Okay, so I will hold the questions until the end, and then Paul and I can answer any questions you might have regarding the science or the policy. So thank you very much, appreciate it.
Good. Thank you, Zach. Hello, everyone. The data that Zach and his team provided us was incredibly important. The in-depth data especially. It helped to validate those anecdotal stories that we were experiencing. As Zach mentioned, from early 2000s, 2008 to 2010, we were getting this stretch of reports from landowners. We have brand new subdivisions going in the middle of the county that were all well dependent and the wells go dry. Then we were getting reports of the farmers destroying their crops or burning them up because of high chlorides. Those are big issues for us to deal with, and the data was incredibly important for us to realize and learn why that's happening, and then to know if we don't do anything about it, it's going to get worse. We're the fastest growing county in the state, one of the most dominant in agriculture. Those are some big challenges. And when you are a county that's along the shorelines of Lake Michigan, I mean, creating awareness was huge on this. And partnerships are big to make it happen. And then how do we solve this problem? We're 565 square miles in Ottawa County, and more than 50% of our county is agriculture. It's rural, particularly in the middle part of the county. Simple solution that people often say, well, extend public water supply. Well, no, it's so cost prohibitive. How do you maintain it? It just doesn't provide that payback. It's not a reliable solution. There's a lot more that we had to look at comprehensively to solve the problem. Creating awareness was number one for us when the study results were released in spring of 2018. Here we are in a Great Lakes state. Water is abundant. Ottawa County's on the shorelines of Lake Michigan, and we've got to tell people that we're running out of water. That's a really tough thing for people to wrap their heads around. They just don't get it. And it's natural and human induced. We can't solve the natural issue. It comes down to what we do at a policy level, at a residential level, and a commercial level. We got water abundant. I mean, that's just what people see everywhere. And then we have this growth, strong business growth, high GDP, economic investment, land development, second fastest between 17 and 18. We've been number one fastest for the last couple of decades. Projected population growth, another 20% from 2010 to 2020. On top of that, another 17% by 2030. It's only going to exacerbate the problem. Could you imagine people not having water come out of their faucets? Well, that is what we have experienced. It's very significant. Then our agricultural production, third highest ag producing, strong economic impact, most diverse agriculture nationwide, and we have producers who irrigate their crops because the center part of the county in particular, that glacial system, is not productive. Producers have to go deep. And then that water level's going down, like Zach said, and then we're pumping up the chlorides. We still have reports happening today. I just had a call last week of another farmer had to yank his pump out because he burnt all of his cut flowers in his hoop house operation. It's significant for us to try and deal with. So right off the bat, we created awareness. Very strategic. We met with every large stakeholder group, environmental groups, water quality forums, Grand Valley, landscapers and irrigators. We're meeting with realtors, Farm Bureau, getting some media attention on this. This was really big for us to start driving awareness and creating those partnerships. And these are kind of alarmist headlines. You know, we had a few of our commissioners say, gosh, isn't this a little alarmist? It is, because we have people running out of water, and we've got, it's a real issue that people are having a hard time wrapping their heads around. Media reports have continued. So then we created the partnerships, and they've just organically have occurred. We've forced them to happen, and it's been a great process. We know that we can't do this in our county planning department to solve this issue. It creates a lot more expertise and partners to push this forward, and that's just a sampling. Zach mentioned we created a task force. That was a 15-member task force, great advisory group. When those study results were released in spring of 2018, we knew we had to really get to work and start thinking about what we had to do. So we formulated an executive committee, this working group that we could pull together regularly for our team to bounce ideas off of, from utility engineers to the director of the Geologic Survey, director of the National Water Resource Institute, public health officials, we had corporation counsel for legal. This was our team that we pulled together for over 20 months to figure out strategies. How are we going to make this work? Because everybody has ideas. Every public meeting we went to, someone has an idea. We documented all of those. 200 plus different things that we knew we had to do, that some of our environmental agencies and conservation districts are already doing. Let's apply it even stronger with more intention, and then being a lot more creative and innovative. We're blazing a whole new territory here in water management for the state on what we're doing. We prepared, so when we went through this process for 20 plus months and everyone's got all these strategies, we went through and validated which ones are most pragmatic, which ones make the most sense, which strategies have high impact, which can be cost effective, and we compiled all those into a proactive strategies index, which we just presented to the County Board of Commissioners last Thursday for the very first time. We anticipate the board to approve this document. But what are the strategy areas that we're looking at? 4 main areas. Number 1, education. Got to continue to educate people. Again, they just don't understand how we can we'll be running out of water in Michigan, especially a county along the shorelines of the Great Lakes. And then integrating behavioral change. How we handle water, how we think about it as residents, as business owners. We have to be proactive and be leaders in water conservation. And then mitigate. This is where we get down to the tools, policies, techniques, kind of the nuts and bolts technical aspects of elements we need to pursue. And then the last strategy area is coordinate. How do we pull this all together? What does it look like from an organizational administrative structure? Primary goal of the plan, just reduce dependency on the bedrock aquifer. Had to keep it straightforward. There's lots of elements to all this, but straightforward is reduce dependency on the bedrock system. And how do we do that? We've got to be creative. How we offset withdrawals. We know we're going to continue to grow as a county, population-wise, economic development. That will happen. And we want to allow that growth to happen. So we have to think very creatively how we balance growth with sustainable water. And then protect and enhance recharge of bedrock aquifers. How do we make sure that growth happens? We're creative, and we know there's some areas of the county where that recharge connectivity occurs with the bedrock formation. How do we help that out? How do we help nature out a little bit more? And then embracing water conservation and reuse. Everybody's got to think about water in a different way. Education strategies, I'm going to fly through these. Outreach campaign, number 1. That was really big. Cooperation with our partners. Oh, that's that crazy button. I was looking for a laser.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Yeah.
Partners. Every one of these pages in this document, we're slowly pulling in partners that'll help us with awareness. And we're the first county in the state to be recognized as a EPA WaterSense partner. There's a lot of information available through that website for strategies to get released out into the public. And then media outlets all over the place helping us to get that message out. Online resources, we do have a dedicated online page, myottawa.org/groundwater. A lot of information. We're driving people to that site to learn more. There's videos, there's the technical stuff, there's downloadable information. And then partnerships for youth education, very significant for us. And we've got a next generation of residents and leaders, and they need to know what's happening. And there's a lot in the science curriculum at the schools where they can blend in some real relevant issues now. We've got some information to share with the students. We can still have the educators meet their educational standards. So the Outdoor Discovery Network and Allendale Christian Schools, they've agreed to create a pilot program for us and to test it out, something that's replicable, that meets standards for education, but also brings together the local relevant issues that we're dealing with. Colleges also have stepped up. We're fortunate to have Grand Valley and Hope within our boundaries. We're working with biology departments, geology departments, applied sciences, from not only working with faculty and students, but there's other research projects, and even Grand Valley's looking at doing some pilot bedrock monitoring for us. Those partnerships are huge, in addition to community partnerships for education. Libraries, Rotaries, Chambers of Commerce, myself and my staff, we're always out and about doing this stuff. And the more that we create partners to continue to advance this message, the more awareness we can create. With a focus from a residential perspective, let's think about the way we use water. It's amazing, and I'll touch on some of the wasteful water things that happen. To date, over 50 meetings, presentations. We even recently had a PBS did a special, they do Great Lakes Now series. PBS did a whole story on Ottawa County and what we're dealing with. It's that important. Community presence, we're getting out in the community at events and working with signage in parks and even doing mobile hands-on exhibits. We're all over with information. Then it's integration strategies. Connecting with homeowners and landscapers, business owners, neighborhood associations, land developers, realtors. We're getting together with all these associations. They need to be our advocates. We need to start deploying more best management practices in a lot of these industries and residential. Nursery and Landscape Association are partners, and all of our environmental stewards. And it's the simple things too. How do we promote conservation strategies? Simple ones in the household with pamphlets, brochures, and PSAs. Landscaping alternatives is really big. We look at some of the estimates on how much water, drinking water, is wasted for green lawns is over 2.2 billion gallons a year is our estimate just in Ottawa County, just to have green grass. Then you think about, gosh, we're running out of water and we got chloride issues and I'm still watering my lawn. It just doesn't make sense. So a big push for us is to develop best management practices with our partners, distributing that messaging, facilitating workshops, cost rebate options. Demonstration sites are really big. We have multiple, not only homeowners, but businesses and libraries saying, you know what, we're gonna get rid of all of our turf grass, we're getting rid of our irrigation systems, and we're gonna put signs up, we're gonna explain to people how native landscapings can be of so much benefit, right? From water conservation standpoint, pollinator habitats, it's tremendous. We need to get out of this thinking in Michigan of green grass. You don't see it anywhere else, right? We just think water is so abundant. That's the attitude that has to change for people. We're even looking to deploy contests. Who can have the best looking native landscape yard? I do have a neighbor, he's got native landscaping, and it looks awful, but there's a good way to do it. Thank you. Alternative irrigation recommendations too. It's water recycling. That needs to be common practice. We need to recycle water more. And we've got neighborhood associations that have covenants that restrict the use of rain barrels. And they all have to have turf grass, and they don't allow native landscaping. And these are the things that we're dealing with from every level. So all of our partners, Conservation District, NRCS, even private consultants are on board to help promote this on our behalf. And service provider training as well. We need to educate our irrigators, because that's one of the, for lack of a better term, that low-hanging fruit, right? We got to think about this landscaping and turf grass. It's so wasteful that we have our realtor associations regionally. We have the West Michigan Nursery and Landscape Association. They're on board to figure this out and how to do it right and be certified and be educated on the right way to do not only the type of turf grass that you want, but how you water it appropriately and getting alternative techniques. We also want to create a certified blue program. There's energy efficiency programs, and you can be certified as using low output. We need to create a program that's low output on water consumption. Even here at this facility, I had to turn on the faucet, and I'm so used to hands-free stuff, and I walk away. I have gone into buildings within the last couple of weeks, and the water is just running on a faucet, right? So those are those simple things that we need to start deploying. Water efficiency. Ag partnerships are very significant for us. Getting our producers together to promote best practices. Many of our producers are using stormwater retention and other alternative water systems. We need to promote that, and we need to provide logistical support for these producers with our partners, and we need to look at connections to financial resources. So we did host a meeting, and we brought in every producer in the county that has wells in that deep formation. We gathered them around the table, and we're talking to them about what this real issue is. And then we're giving them a survey, and we're going to learn more about their water use, and are they interested in alternative techniques. Let's look at more advanced water irrigation equipment. What I heard was 2 out of 4 of the irrigation systems, like pivot well systems in the county, are those overhead sprayers that basically humidify the air. There's cost share dollars available through NRCS, and we need to get some more funding through other partners to upgrade those systems. Do the drip irrigation or the low nozzle ones that get the water to right where it needs to happen. Those types of changes will hopefully make adjustments to the projections that Zach and his team had on groundwater consumption increasing over time. We need to move the needle down. That is what this whole goal is. Mitigation strategies, we're the planning department, model zoning guidelines, looking at lot size, density requirements, and low impact design, landscaping requirements. Those are things that are built into municipal zoning codes. Many communities say, well, you've got to keep your grass at this length, it's got to be turf grass. I'm changing those things. High density development in rural areas of the county that don't have access to water and sewer, can't do that anymore. These are big changes from traditional land planning techniques. We also know we need to deploy overlay districts, working not only with the data that Zach had, but with the well drillers in the county. We know that there are areas, seasonal recharge, full recharge, that have connections to deep bedrock aquifer. We need to start to deploy some overlay zones to protect those sensitive areas. And that is through different kind of development techniques and even conservation easements, purchase of development rights programs, anything to support that continuous recharge into the system. And we're looking at a countywide groundwater ordinance, basically, not telling developers what you can and what you can't do, but what you can do. But this is how you should do it. This is how you can do a development, but how do we connect them to municipal infrastructure where it needs to go, and how do we fund it appropriately? These are decisions that local officials have not thought about before. We've never really thought about the geology under our feet when we're doing land development.